Hey guys, good morning. I'm Max and I run a tactical training company called Max Velocity Tactical. And my intent today is to talk a little bit about the whole training methodology in terms of tactical training, competition shooting, what's important, and to try and, in my opinion, expose some misunderstandings over the whole thing. First thing I want to say is that, we have the Second Amendment and, a firearm is a tool, and it's completely up to you to buy this tool, stick it in the gun safe, do whatever it is you want to do with this tool, okay? I'm not here today telling you what to do. My sort of area of expertise is military/tactical training, and what I want to talk about is often the ignorance of correct training methodology. Especially if you're self-taught or whatever, you're just going to take that firearm that you bought out and shoot it at the creek, whatever you want to do, run around on the flat range, okay? There's a lot of things out there that are not good training methodologies. One of the things to understand is that a firearm, a rifle, a carbine, it is a weapon, and that is the intent of it. It is a weapon, and so you're going to use that either professionally because your job is in the military, or something similar, or if you're a private citizen, that's your self-defense tool, okay? So it is a weapon, and that's its primary purpose. It doesn't mean to say that you can't use it for other things, sporting things, training things along the way, but that's the primary purpose of your firearm. One thing to talk about is tactical training itself, because it's a little bit of a misnomer in terms of what is tactical training, and are we doing tactical stuff or are we not doing tactical stuff? Well, interestingly, as a tactical trainer, a lot of the things that we do, and we explain this on classes, they're not actually tactics. So tactics is where you put all those things you've learned together to apply a solution to a combat situation, whether that be in training, force on force, wherever it is, or in real life, a self-defense or a combat situation. But tactics are built of TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. So they're built of all the components, the skills and drills that you make up and you put together, and then you allow you to run tactics. So as a tactical trainer, we're on the flat range. We're building all those skills, drills, shooting, etc. all together, but what we're doing is we're putting it into a tactical context. And that's the key point, we're putting it into a tactical context. Why are we doing this, for example? And then as you get further in your training, in your progression of the training, it starts to become apparent why you're doing this. And when you start to look at things like Instagram influencers, that kind of thing, what's often missing is a proper tactical context. So they're just doing stuff and it's like, because it looks cool. And it isn't necessarily applicable to a real combat situation. So skills and drills are built of basics. Basics, you put them together and you make a tactic. If I want to teach someone to, for example, bound backwards away from the enemy, that in itself is just learning a skill. It's a drill, it's a simple drill. If I, however, put that together in context as a, for example, break contact drill, break contact front, then actually that starts to become a tactic. It starts to become a viable SOP or standard operating procedure that you can use when you go out on the ground. So what's really important is that you train how you fight. You avoid bad habits and you don't fall into a false training methodology. This is absolutely key. Proper tactical context to train how you fight. You've got to build what is often called muscle memory, okay? This is flow. This is proficiency. What's interesting about that is that if you get good at the basics, so for example, if you get good at weapon manipulation, then what that allows you to happen is you can get your head out of your gun, out of your weapon, on the live range or whatever it is, and what that creates is situational awareness. So as you build these building blocks up, what you're doing is you're creating better situational awareness, which allows you to apply the tactics or the skills and drills into tactics better because you've got better situational awareness. It's all part of the game. It's all part of tactical training. So brilliance at the basics. That's what it's really all about. Combat skills, as in tactics, actually have to be pretty basic. Because if they're not basic, they will not be able to be conducted under the stress of combat. If someone starts to tell you about super secret squirrel stuff, then they're not talking sense. Okay, it's basic, but it doesn't make it easy. So when we talk about shoot, move, and communicate, the communicating bit is hard. It's easy to shoot. But when you start putting it together, shoot, move, and communicate, into what we call a basic drill, but you're doing that in the chaos of a combat situation, it's not easy. So basic is not easy. But if you make it complicated, then you got no chance of executing that. So much IG influencer stuff is not real, and it's not going to be combat effective. It's not going to pass contact with the enemy. It's flashy cool guy stuff. And actually, you know, when I say enemy, it's not going to pass contact with a basic self-defense situation. There are no secrets to amazing marksmanship fundamentals. It's just basic stuff. It's basic repetition to gather flow in order to then make it second nature and therefore be able to develop greater situational awareness. Shooting itself is probably about 15% of the overall tactical picture, okay? One of the issues is people will say that they're just doing shooting. Well, that's a misunderstanding of a proper training methodology, because you've got to do all that shooting stuff anyway, but then you put it all together because you have a proper tactical context, and then you can put it together to run a tactic in the face of the situation that you find yourself in. It's kind of dishonest. If you say, well, I'm kind of self-taught and I therefore don't know anything about tactics and I'm not doing tactics, but you produce cool guy videos, what you're doing is you're misleading people. You can say, well, I'm just doing shooting. I'm just doing like competition stuff, even though it's not a competition stuff. Well, and then what you do is you put together misleading drills and TTPs. A tactical analogy that I want to talk to you about. Let's talk about mixed martial arts or fencing. Okay, let's make an analogy here. So, if you are doing mixed martial arts, which is actually it's a combat sport, so it has some rules to it, but it's basically fighting. Okay, fencing is sword fighting, but it's put in a sport context, and shooting is shooting, and it's also, you know, a martial art, and it's put mainly in a sport or training context. Okay, so if you're training for mixed martial arts, you're going to be training all of those components. You're going to be training ground fighting, stand-up fighting. You're going to be, you know, training how to get out of, you know, being subdued on the ground, how to get out of being choked out. You're going to be working on speed. You're going to be working on PT. All of these are the components in a similar way that we talk about the components of tactical training. But the whole point is that if you're training MMA, even then you go sparring or you're hitting the pads, whatever you're doing that with the ultimate aim of the tactical context of getting in the ring and having a savage competition fight. And we all know that if someone's, you know, pretty good at MMA fighting, in a self-defense situation on the streets, they're also going to be better than some other people who haven't done that training. Okay? That's having the correct tactical context. You're not going to find them producing videos. You might find them producing videos of hardcore training, but it's not going to be flashy stuff that isn't going to apply in the ring. If a guy's hitting a bag really fast, he's hitting a bag really fast because his coach says, let's work on this aspect right now. Fencing again. So fencing is it's a martial art, okay, and, you know, different sword types, that kind of thing, and it's put into a competition aspect. It's like force on force, because nobody's actually supposed to die, and it's going to be made up of all those components that allow you to actually go out and have a fencing fight. You don't see a guy, you know, running around the gym with a saber, hitting posts as hard as he can and running from one to the other aimlessly, running backwards. You don't in a sort of a nonsensical way. You don't see that, okay? So, you know, someone with really bad footwork demoing something that's pointless just to show how hard or how fast they can hit something. That's not what someone's going to do, to take the analogy, as they're training to actually go force on force with someone in a fencing fight. So mixed martial arts, fencing, both martial sports, you can see why they're put in the correct tactical context. What's also missed is that what's really important here is if you're training that martial art of shooting for your, whatever it is, self-defense situation, combat situation, whatever it is you feel you're training for, you're not going to be able to execute this unless you've really genuinely built the whole warrior, the warrior mindset. That's the only way you're going to be able to take the fight to the enemy. It's not about flashy drills, looking cool. It's if you've actually built the warrior mindset. Have you built it through effort, training, failure? It's a whole warrior thing. It's a psychological aspect. It's the physical aspect. It's the skills aspect. It's the teamwork aspect. It's all these things that come together to make the whole warrior. Doing flashy stuff on the flat range isn't going to build that. So what it is your whole thing. It's a house built on sand. It's completely undercut because you've never really considered actually having to take the fight to the enemy. One thing that's often raised is the idea of special mission units, etc., bringing in people who are experts on marksmanship, civilian guys. I mean, we're all civilian guys now, but or for example, nutrition or physical training, and absolutely no problem with that at all, because all that's doing is making guys better at the things that they need to be good at. If you are a special missions unit whose role is, like, for example, hostage rescue, it's really important that you're good at marksmanship. But the thing is, you've been trained, selected to the highest cream of the crop level, and you have all that training and all that tactical context, so you know what's right. And if someone is coming in and teaching you better marksmanship, you can apply that within the tactical context to what you're doing, which might be going into a room with hostages and bad guys. You've got the absolute tactical context. So this is often used to say, well, yeah, we're training kind of competition stuff. We're not really interested in tactics, even though nobody understands what the tactics really are. And they talk about competition shoots. Well, here's the issue. So I would rather have something like a stress shoot. I'd rather have something that's in proper tactical context, where it's a competition in the fact that, there's standards of the competition, there's ways of winning, ways of losing, ways of beating other people. You're moving to a piece of cover, and then you're engaging targets, whatever it is. So it's a stress shoot that works on real skills. The problem I see is a lot of competition stuff out there. It's completely divorced from any tactical context. And therefore, it teaches you a lot of bad habits. You're not going to rise to the level of a hero in an action movie when that self-defense situation comes your way. You're going to fall to the level of training that you've got. And if you don't really have any training or no understanding of tactical context, you think you're good, because I know people often talk about shooting, but because they can shoot their rifle or their handgun really fast, they think that they're good for a self-defense situation. But what happens is you're falling to the lowest level of your training, which may actually be none, other than just manipulating the firearm that you've got. So it's important that you have a proper tactical context understanding to what you're doing. Now, if you are that guy who is, Mr. Special Forces and comes in and decides he wants to run 3-gun, he understands exactly what he's been trained. He knows what the deal is and what's going on. Whereas someone who only knows what they've watched on Instagram or whatever, who only knows those things, doesn't know any better. And that's the problem. So, under stress, as I've just mentioned, you're going to fall to the level of training that you've got. And so that means that even this high-speed shooting that you do may not in itself even be good in a self-defense scenario. Just because you can, pull the trigger really fast against a cardboard target doesn't mean you've got the warrior mindset and the training to deal with the situation in real life with the fear, with the tunnel vision, things that you haven't trained for. What MVT does, Max Velocity Tactical, is we focus on training whole warrior skills. So we're building the building blocks from weapon manipulation, situational awareness, shoot, move, and communicate. We're building the whole warrior. It's really important to train how you fight. Whatever you visualize, whatever you envisage, whether you're just thinking about self-defense situations, you may not be as motivated as some of my students who want to go into small unit tactics training, which is what we specialize in. But what's missing from that is that the more training you do, the greater situational awareness you'll create, and that will loop back into your everyday situation where you have to actually do some kind of self-defense act. It's all going to loop back in. It's very limiting to say, hey, I'm just going to train handgun because I think this is what's going to happen, the standard 3 meter, whatever it is, shoot, etc. Okay, well, you're limiting yourself because you're limiting your situational awareness. You're not building the whole warrior skills that are going to help you survive. What it's really all about is proper, effective movement. It's about understanding use of cover. It's about being able to operate either yourself or as a team. It's about maneuvering on the enemy or maneuvering away from the enemy. It's about proper shoot, move, and communicate effectively. Those 3 words, shoot, move, and communicate, are really easy to say, really easy to read about, but they're not easy to execute. Like I said, you want your drills to be basic, but it doesn't mean that without training you can execute them. Small unit tactics courses are where you're going to learn actual tactics. Real combat training focuses on mastering the fundamentals and utilizing those building blocks to create effective tactics that you can use in the face of the enemy. That's what it's really all about, guys. So when it comes down to, hey, competition shooting, and when it comes down to, I'm not really doing tactics, that's a misunderstanding. By all means, do competitions, but try and put it in a correct tactical context and realize that the reality of self-defense training is that you will fall to the lowest level of training you've got. And for many people, that is none, or that is self-taught from a video. It isn't really a thing about competition versus tactical training. What it is, it's understanding correct training methodology and understanding how you progress, and then how you can throw competitions in if you want to and that's what you enjoy, but understanding where bad habits are and how to avoid those bad tactical habits, the kind of things that will get you killed. I hope that that's made sense and I've explained that well enough. I'm happy to take questions, etc. I appreciate your time. Thanks for listening.